They said war would never touch America's shores. That oceans were walls, and distance was protection. But in the quiet corners of New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, there were whispers. Whispers carried by men who spoke softly, dressed neatly, and knew too much. Among them was one man whose name was not his own. To his neighbors, he was Kenji Tanaka, a polite, soft-spoken language teacher who rented a small apartment above a bookstore in San Francisco. But to the Empire of Japan, he was Agent K-47, one of the most trusted eyes of Tokyo in the Western world. Kenji had arrived in America years before the war. He came as a student, studying engineering and languages at the University of California. He was bright, invisible, and disciplined, the kind of man no one noticed twice. And that was his greatest weapon. By 1940, the world was already burning. Europe was under siege. Hitler's armies marched through nations like fire through paper. And across the Pacific, Japan's empire expanded relentlessly, through China, Manchuria, and beyond. But Japan needed something more than soldiers, it needed knowledge. Blueprints, defense maps, naval schedules, the kind of information that could shift the balance of war. And Kenji Tanaka was the man chosen to find it. His mission was simple: blend in, observe, and report. Every week, he sent coded letters to a cultural society in Tokyo, letters that looked like reports on American literature, but in truth contained encrypted details about ship movements in Pearl Harbor, aircraft production rates, and military research. He used invisible ink, microfilm hidden inside fountain pens, and coded phrases that only one man in Japan could decode. But espionage, like war, has no certainty. One mistake, one wrong word, could mean death. Kenji's contact in America was an elderly Japanese tailor named Mr. Watanabe. By day, he stitched suits for businessmen in downtown San Francisco. By night, his backroom turned into a silent office of espionage. Behind a false wall hung maps of the Pacific, naval routes, and coded telegrams from Tokyo. Each night, Kenji would slip into the shop after closing. The lights would dim. Watanabe would pour tea, and the two men would speak in hushed tones. "Tokyo requests more on naval capacity," Watanabe whispered one night. "Especially at Pearl Harbor." Kenji nodded. "I can get that. But security has tightened. Too many eyes." Watanabe looked up. "Eyes can be blinded. You just need to move faster than their gaze." It was the last conversation they ever had. 3 days later, Watanabe's shop burned down in a mysterious fire. The police called it an accident. Kenji knew better. Someone had found out. From that day, he worked alone. He stopped writing letters and began memorizing everything: ship designs, airfield layouts, supply schedules, committing them to memory, then destroying every trace. He became a ghost among civilians, moving silently through the shadows of a nation that did not yet know it was being watched. Then came December 7, 1941. That morning, Kenji was in his apartment, listening to the radio. When the news broke, his heart froze. Japanese forces have launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. He turned off the radio. The room went silent. Outside, the city buzzed with confusion. But inside, Kenji sat in stillness. He knew the world had just changed, and his cover might not survive it. By noon, Japanese Americans were being questioned, detained, watched. The FBI began sweeping through communities, seizing letters, photographs, anything suspicious. Kenji destroyed everything: his codes, his contacts, his hidden transmitter. But he could not destroy what was in his mind. Within a week, he was being followed. The man tailing him was not a soldier, he was an intelligence officer from the FBI's new counter-espionage unit. His name was Agent Samuel Rhodes, and he'd been hunting foreign spies since the war began in Europe. He didn't know who Kenji was yet, but he could smell secrets. For weeks, Rhodes followed him through foggy streets, across crowded markets, into train stations. He saw the man's routine, his politeness, his calm, too calm. Rhodes told his partner, "That man hides something. I can see it in his stillness." Meanwhile, Kenji's orders had changed. Tokyo's last message, sent before communications were cut, told him to find out one thing: when will the Americans strike back? Japan needed to know the strength of America's response, the movement of troops, the readiness of aircraft, the plans for retaliation. To find it, Kenji needed to get close to the source, the naval offices near San Francisco Bay. It was suicide if caught. But duty was duty. He forged new papers under the name Daniel Takeda, applied for a maintenance job at a naval supply depot, and waited. The war had made America desperate for labor, and background checks were rushed. Within a month, Kenji was working among crates of weapons, uniforms, and radio equipment, the very heart of what he was sent to observe. Every night, as the others left, he stayed behind, sweeping floors, but memorizing files, blueprints, and schedules. By dawn, he'd walk home through the fog, a shadow in the city of lights. But even shadows leave traces. One night, Rhodes followed him all the way to the docks. He saw Kenji meet a man, a fisherman who handed him a small wooden box. When Rhodes approached later, the box was gone. Only wet footprints remained on the pier. "Who are you, Mr. Tanaka?" Rhodes muttered to himself. Days turned into weeks. The war grew darker. America struck back with fire and fury, island by island. And Kenji's heart, once full of patriotic pride, began to waver. He saw American families sending sons to war, weeping as letters came back with black seals. He saw kindness too, strangers helping Japanese Americans being relocated, soldiers sharing food with children in camps. And he began to wonder, who was the real enemy now? Then came the message he'd been dreading. A coded letter slipped under his door one morning. "Prepare final transmission. Operation Sunset." It was his last order. He was to deliver one final report, detailing the location of US ships moving toward the Pacific. After that, he was to disappear. But Rhodes was closing in. The night of the transmission, Kenji went to an abandoned warehouse near the pier. Inside, beneath the floorboards, was his shortwave transmitter, his final link to Tokyo. He tuned the frequency, heart pounding, the sound of static filling the room. "Agent K-47, he whispered in Japanese. "Final report, the fleet moves at dawn. Target. Don't move." The voice came from behind him, sharp, American, familiar. Rhodes stepped into the dim light, gun drawn. Kenji froze. Slowly, he turned. "So," Rhodes said quietly, "you are the ghost I've been chasing." Kenji didn't answer. "I've seen spies before," Rhodes continued, his tone almost regretful. "But you blend too well. You almost fooled me." "I never meant to hurt anyone," Kenji said softly. "Only to serve my country." "Your country bombed ours," Rhodes shot back. "And yours will bomb mine," Kenji said, his voice steady. "That's war, isn't it? Men killing each other for flags they never chose." Rhodes hesitated, just for a moment, and in that moment, Kenji moved. He dashed toward the transmitter, smashing it under his foot. Sparks flew. The room filled with smoke. Rhodes shouted, "Stop! Don't make me!" But the gunfire came anyway. When the smoke cleared, Kenji lay against the wall, blood spreading across his chest. The transmitter was destroyed. The report never sent. Rhodes lowered his weapon, breathing hard. He stepped closer, watching the man's final moments. Kenji looked up, eyes calm, almost peaceful. "Tell them," he whispered, "tell them I did my duty." And then he was gone. The FBI listed him as an unidentified Japanese operative. His true name never appeared in the papers. The government buried the story, sealing the files under classified. But years later, when the war ended, a retired officer, Samuel Rhodes, visited Hiroshima as part of the occupation forces. He walked through the ruins, saw the shadows on the walls, and remembered the quiet man who had died in silence. He realized then that both of them, the spy and the hunter, had been pawns in a storm far greater than either could control. History never recorded Kenji Tanaka's name. But in the hidden archives of war, among the forgotten agents and silent shadows, his story still lingers, a tale of loyalty, tragedy, and the thin line between enemy and human. Because in war, heroes and traitors often wear the same face. And sometimes, the bravest act of all is not to win, but to remain unseen.